Section 10.4 is on installment buying. So to get things started here, we're going to go ahead and get some definitions. So you may want to go ahead and just pause the video and just write through these definitions, but we'll go ahead and talk through them. All right, so let's go ahead and talk through these definitions. Maybe just to provide a little bit of context first, installment buying is typically the type of lending that someone does when buying a house or a car. That looks more like a train, but oh well. The purchases are just a little bit larger in amount, so it's harder to go ahead and give that money up front. But I do pray that you get to a point in your life where you can pay large quantities up front and not have to rely on loans to go ahead and do purchases. Because again, like we've been learning, loans, there's a cost to them. And hopefully you'll see that as we go through here, that installment buying, you typically end up spending a lot more. I think sometimes even double. So we'll focus on that as we go through a few examples. Again, the word installment right here is if you think about installing something, you're going to put something onto another system. So you're basically installing payments into the loan one piece at a time. All right, so there's two types of installment loans. A pretty common one, probably the more common one, is the fixed installment loan, where someone pays a fixed amount of money for a set number of payments. This is what you'll see with student loans or auto loans. And each payment is repaid in equal pieces. Another type of loan is an open-ended installment. This is also sometimes referred to as a variable loan. There's lots of different kind of plays on this one. You just have maybe one that adjusts with the market. You maybe have a balloon mortgage or a balloon type loan where essentially it's small and then it pops at the end and you have to pay one large amount up front, or not up front, but one large amount at the end. But these aren't as common because they're less predictable. So I would really always recommend consider fixed installment loans, but there are maybe some reasons for these. But be careful with these because you pay a variable amount each month. So 1 month it might be $5. Okay, so always be more than $5, but the next is be $10. I just wanted to give that as an illustration. How much you pay each month affects how much interest you pay. Most common one of these is our credit cards. I would recommend using credit cards only if you have the money to pay it off. Personally, I pay off the balance on my credit cards each month. There's advantages such as like the typical 1.5% cash back. It's like free money, but it's definitely dangerous. I know Dave Ramsey, a Christian financial advisor, really is against credit cards because they are very tempting to use, but you could get into a lot of trouble and have a lot of difficulty getting out of debt and living a good life if you have racked up credit card debt. But anyway, the Truth in Lending Act in 1968 requires institutions to tell borrowers two things. The APR, or the annual percentage rate, which is the true rate of interest charged for the loan. So they can't hide any sort of interest rates in different wording or anything. There's this APR encompasses the exact interest rate charged for the loan. Then the finance charge. The finance charge is the total amount of money the borrower must pay for borrowing the money. You could think about this as interest, and in fact, it actually includes the interest. So let's go ahead and emphasize that. The finance charge really includes the interest, but it also has additional fees. For example, mortgages or loans have an origination fee. That's basically something the system set up is like. There's also typically like buyer or seller's fees. There's an escrow fee if you have to set up an escrow. An escrow typically depends on the amount of down payment. More on that in a sec. But anyway, for what we're thinking, you can see the word finance charge. Think interest for this lesson. All right. So we're going to primarily focus on calculating payments for fixed installment loans. And it just is one of those things. You don't have to redo computations. You just do the computation. You know how much this loan is going to cost every month. To figure out the total cost or the total installment price, so again, total right here, what you're going to do is, one thing we're going to compute is monthly payments. So what we need to do to get the total price is add together or sum of all monthly payments. But I alluded to this earlier. You also have to include with that is the down payment. And the down payment is essentially some money that you give to the lending institution up front. So a down payment is essentially going to be the money or the cash paid up front. And there are certain advantages and even requirements to pay some money up front. So for a mortgage, probably one of the largest loans that people will consider taking out in their life, is 20% is pretty typical. Now you could go ahead and put less down, but then you have to do something called PMI or private mortgage insurance, which essentially protects the bank if you can't pay, but you have to pay for that insurance. So it's definitely one of those things that it just feels like it's throwing money to the wind, but that's why if you pay enough upfront and a large enough down payment, you typically could waive that insurance. So there's two ways to go ahead and compute fixed installment loans, or that I should say compute the monthly payments for fixed installment loans. The first one is using a table. So just slide ahead to look at the table. It's on the next page. So on the left-hand side is the number of payments. On the top, there is going to be an APR, or annual percentage rate. And then the finance charge or interest is per $100 of the amount financed. So you can see, like, if you had 6 payments at 4%, then you would have $1.17 per 100. So we'll do some computations on that. Let's slide back up. It has the steps already outlined here and a little formula we're going to need. So to find the total finance charge, we're going to use that table that we just talked about. We're going to, so once you have the finance charge, you're going to find out how many hundreds are in the amount financed, and then you'll multiply those to get the total finance charge. Then you'll have also to compute the monthly payment, and you basically you spread out that finance charge over the number of payments. So the monthly payment formula is as follows. I think in the notes, it's worded like this. It is the amount, let me go back to red, the amount financed. You could kind of think about this right here as the principal of the loan, plus the total finance charge. And that total finance charge, again, is just going to be, you could think about that as the interest for the sake of this lesson. It does include more. And you have to go ahead and, of course, divide that by the total number of months to figure out the monthly payment. Total number, no, I think the way the book words this is the total number of payments. And then, of course, if it's a monthly payment, but just in case it had a different period or something like that, you could change this to like a yearly total, whatever. The second way to do this is to use this formula. It's fairly complicated because, again, when you have this rate, which is a decimal, and you multiply that by the principal or the amount financed, you get a decimal, and then you have this negative exponent, so you have to reason through how negative exponents behave. So we're not going to use this method, but it is just worthwhile pointing out. You can type all of this into a formula, and you can get your monthly payment, but we're going to just rely on the table. So let's do some computations. So there are 2 exercises right here. You are first asked in number 1, you're told that the principal or the amount financed is $40,000, has an APR of 9.5%, and 60 months. So we have everything we need. So remember, there are 2 steps. We need to go ahead and first determine the finance charge. So that was step 1 above. So let's see, part A. I'll put that over here in red. Find the finance charge. All right, so there's 3 steps. So I'll just call this step I. What we'll do first is use the table. So let's see, we have 9.5% for 60 months. So I'm going to go ahead and circle the 60 right here. And we have 9.5%, so that's going to be up in the top right. And then what we'll do is find where they intersect. So again, you could draw a line over this way. You can draw a line down. And what you'll get is this number right here. So what we have is a finance charge of $26.01. Again, this is per $100. Again, the per $100 is specified right there. So step 2, what we need to do is figure out how many hundreds. So we're going to take the amount financed, P, so this right here is our P, and we're going to divide that by 100. So that is going to be 40,000 divided by 100. So what we have is $400. So it looks a little weird, but this 400 is what we're going to need to do. And then the last step to figure out the finance charge, I, is to just multiply those. It's going to be part I times part II, which is going to be 26.01 times 400. And this will end up giving you, and again, I encourage you to verify these numbers, 10,404. So this right here is the finance charge, which you could think about this as, for simplicity here, as the interest. There's part A, done. Part B, where we're asked to determine the monthly payment, we have to go ahead and use that formula. And the formula is pretty intuitive. So to figure out the monthly payment, I'll just probably call this MP for short. It is going to be the principal plus the interest divided by the number of months. So MP is going to be the principal. So again, you borrowed it, so you still have to pay it back. So that's why you have to include that. Plus the interest, and that is going to be what we got in part A. So that's going to be 10,404. And then we're going to divide that by 60 months. I'll just do 60. So our monthly payment, if you go ahead and again, just make sure you add the numerator and then hit equal and then divide by 60, you'll find that is going to be $840.07. So that doesn't seem too bad, $840.07. But if you look at how much you're actually, this loan is costing you, is $10,000 extra. So if you didn't have $40,000 up front, you can be like, okay, I just need to take a loan. But you basically pay another quarter of the amount just in interest to go ahead and get that $40,000 you need for whatever purchase. The big issue, maybe a little bit historically, when you go back to the housing crash back in like 2008, is a lot of people were getting loans and the banks weren't doing any check to see if people could actually afford these. So like this right here, when people say they're underwater and or upside down in their house, is basically they owe more on the house than it's worth, and that owing more comes from the interest or the finance charge. So it's again best if you could not use these types of loans, because you can see they're very expensive, namely because it takes so long. In this case, this is for 60 months. This is a pretty typical amount for an auto loan on a new car. If you have good credit, this could get lower, but if you have poor credit, because you maybe mismanage your money and you're trying to get better, that's not uncommon. So again, let's go ahead and do another example, but this time let's go ahead and do one that has down payment. So let's go ahead and set this up. I would encourage you to maybe let me get you set up, and then I would tell you to pause it, and I'd recommend to maybe try it and finish it, but let me get you set up here. There's a little bit of setup we need to do. So Jan paid $7,000 on her new air conditioning unit for her house. Here's the new part. She paid 20% as a down payment. So again, we have 20% as a down payment. And then she financed the balance with 36-month fixed installment loan with an APR of 5%. So let's go ahead and first compute the down payment. This is going to be 20% of 7,000. So to do that, I'm going to just do the 7,000 times 0.20 or 20. And you'll find that's going to be 1,400. So that's our down payment. Now, she paid that up front. So what this will do will decrease the amount financed. And that amount financed is what will determine our monthly payment on. She already paid that 20% or that 1,400. So what you'll do is do the 7,000, but you'll take away the money she already paid, the down payment. So Jan is just going to get a $5,600 loan. So Jan will have borrow $5,600. But from here, we can go ahead and actually do the computations, similar to what we did above, just using this as our amount financed. So I'd encourage you to maybe to pause the video and try it. So let's go through the 2 steps. So part A, again, part A has 3 parts. The first thing you're going to need to do is use the table. So let's go up to there. Let's see what we need. We need 5,600 as underlined to there. 36. Well, actually, we don't need the 5,600 yet, but we need the 5% and the 36. All right. So 36th month or 3 years is right there. 5% is right there. And let's see where they intersect. So I'll bring this one down. I'll bring this one over. And what we get is the intersection here at $7.90 per 100. So that's the second part. So what we have is $7.90 per 100. Now we need to go ahead and compute the, let's see, that's going to be the amount financed. So she finances $5,600. How many $100 in there? Well, there's 56 100s. So again, that 56 is what we need. So the third part to determine the finance charge is just multiplying those. So I'll just do finance charge is going to be, let's see, so 7.90 times 56 is going to be $442.40. So that answers part A. To do part B now, you're just going to have to go ahead and add the amount financed. So our monthly payment is going to be $5,600 plus the $442.40. Again, add those, hit equal to, divide by the number of payments, which in this case is 36. And you'll find that it's $167.84. Again, that's how much Jan will pay per month. And again, just to reflect on this, so she paid $1,400 up front, and that actually reduced her total finance charge because this $1,400 is not included in this part right here. So not too bad, but this will add up over the course of 3 years to precisely the 5,600, so about 6,000 right there. All right, so that's these you see a lot in student loans. You also see these in and obviously loans. What's the word I'm looking for? Car loans. You also see these on things like air conditioning units or some other like charges like that. Now, the biggest type of installment loan is going to be on mortgages. Again, if you are maybe not 100% confident on what we just did, I'd recommend sliding down and trying this problem and this problem. Numbers, it looks like it's, I believe this is actually a typo. I feel like this, oh no, actually, don't do the second one yet. That's the mortgage. Try the business loan one. We just have, the 2 exercises. All right. So let's talk about mortgages. It has some of its own terminology. So let's see. A mortgage. When purchasing a home, buyers usually seek a mortgage, which again is just a specific name for a fixed installment loan. Well, it doesn't have to be a fixed installment, but for a loan for a house. It is a long-term loan in which property is pledged as security for the payment of the difference between the down payment and the sale price. It's known as the homeowner. So the reason that we're giving it a different name is because essentially there is some security here. The bank could go ahead and take back the property, where a lot of other loans they can't take it back. So these are typically where you get the ideas of like foreclosure. If a house is foreclosed on, is that the bank had to take it back. So the way this works is very similar to the ones above. The bank is going to give you and your family, if you have one, some money. You'll go ahead and go into the house, and when you're older, typically a mortgage is 15 to 30 years. You'll end up paying a lot more money. So the poor guy, he balded. He lost his hair and he lost his money there. Anyway, this right here, that extra money, of course, is the finance charges or the interest paid back to the bank. Anyway, again, this is monthly, so this may be diagrams may be a little misleading, but you go ahead and do this one installment at a time. The amount of cash the buyer must pay to the seller before the lending institution will grant a buyer mortgage is known as the down payment. So this is the pay before, so the money up front, so that's your down payment. There are many types of mortgages. The interest in a fixed rate, so again, very similar to the fixed installment, but a fixed rate loan is fixed during the duration of the loan, whereas the interest rate for a adjustable is another word for variable, but typically in mortgages, those use an adjustable rate loan. It may change every period as specified by the loan. And we won't go into the actual process of going through the mortgage application, but it is a fairly lengthy process. Closing is where essentially you go to a table with some sort of, typically a title company, and they'll go ahead and sign over all of the documents and give you the keys. So this process takes a while. Part of this is just because of regulations, so hopefully don't have another housing crisis that we did back in 2008, but submitting a lot of paperwork. They will ask for a bunch of things. So like paychecks, they'll do a credits check, see what loans you have. Though I think even when we went to purchase our house, they even asked for a statement from our previous homeowners association that we lived in a townhouse, and they said that wanting to know how much it had cost us. So it was a fairly lengthy process, but let's go ahead and do some computations. It has a different table. This one's going to work a little bit different because the numbers are so much larger. This table actually wraps together the monthly payment and the interest into the monthly principal and the interest payment into one number, and is per 1,000 this time. So same kind of use of the table, but we'll actually have less work. So Tony is buying a condominium selling for $135,000. To obtain the mortgage, Tony is required to make a 20% down payment, and Tony obtains a 15-year mortgage with a rate of 5%. All right, so the first thing is just that computation for the down payment. So the 20% down, so our down payment is going to be 0.2 times the amount which it's selling for. So it's going to be $135 or $135,000. So this ends up working to 27. So Tony has to essentially give whoever's selling the condominium $27,000 before the bank will even originate this loan, which has its own fees and things like that. So the amount of the mortgage, of course, is going to be how much initially it cost, but Tony paid $27,000. So all that is left for Tony to pay is $108,000. So again, that money didn't just disappear. Well, it did from Tony's, but it got him some equity in the house is the technical word. So this down payment, this is considered $27,000 in equity in the house. Okay, determine the monthly payment for principal and interest. So this is where we go to our table. It's a 15-year mortgage, so it's going to use this column right here. And it was a 5%, yeah, so it was a 5% loan. So it's going to be this row right here. And if you find where they intersect, it's going to be right here, this value with 7.90794. All right. So we just looked at that there and then took that there and got that value. All right, so the thing is, we do have to remember that is per 1,000. So we have a little bit to do. So you could kind of think about this as kind of the same way for part C. The first step was to go ahead and use the table, which we found was $7.90. Well, it's hard to say cents here because we actually do more precision here. So 7.90794. And again, to emphasize, this is per 1,000, and that includes both the principal and the interest. So we're not going to have to do part B from the previous page. Okay, the second step right here is to go ahead and do 108,000, the amount financed, divided by 1,000 this time. So that is going to be 108. So there's $108,000 in that that was financed. So again, the 108 is the important part. In part 3, the actual monthly, this right here is a little bit different. Before it was the finance charge. This right is our monthly payment because it includes both of them in that number, and you just multiply. So it's going to be the 7.90794 times 108, and this will be 854.06. Again, this is per month. Whew, that's actually a pretty reasonable monthly payment. And one thing that is maybe not easily seen here, though, is the total cost. What is the total cost? Well, to figure that out, it's not explicitly asked here, but if you look at it, it's going to be the down payment. So it's going to be the $27,000. So they still paid that plus, well, this $854.06 is going to be paid monthly for how many months? For 15 years. So this is 15 years. So it's going to be 15 times 12 to go ahead, and if you work all this out, this ends up being 100 and, well, actually, I don't know. Let me go ahead and grab my calculator here just to make sure we do this. Again, order of operations, we're going to have 854 times, let's do that. Let's try that again. 854.06 times 15 times 12. Okay, so that's right there. It's just the part that wasn't paid up front, and then the 27,000. Okay, yeah. So you end up paying $180,730.80. Or I shouldn't say you, but Tony does in this case. So if you look at this, the cost to actually purchase this with this mortgage was quite a bit extra. I mean, it's going to be an extra $45,000. That's a nice low-end Tesla or whatever you think to buy. If you had $40,000, I'll probably get a Tesla. But anyway, it's spread over 15 years, so there are certain things that are not adjusted. So there's like maybe For example, there's ideas of refinancing. So one thing that when we first bought our house back in 2015, we were at like a 4.5, not dollar, but 4.5% loan. But when everything was going on with COVID, interest rates went really down, and we even paid a little bit extra up front, and we're now at like half of that interest rate. But what that did is reset the loan. There's a lot of really cool ideas, like even for like a 15-year loan, 15-year versus a 30-year, you could typically get like a percentage that is going to be lower for a 15-year. But again, then you'll have a higher monthly payment because you only have 15 years of payments instead of 30. There's a lot that could be discussed just on mortgages alone. And I think you're going to find that just having some basic foundation will give you some insight when it finally comes time for you to do that. So I'd encourage you to go ahead and do this second one right here. Just is very similar with some different values to make sure you know the table. But that, and the answers are right there at the end, but that will consume our, no pun intended, but we have consumed chapter 10. So hopefully you have learned a little bit more about consumer mathematics. If you have questions, reach out, but good luck